He's being called one of the greatest imposters of our time. The feds say he had multiple identities, but often posed as a Navy commander and scammed donations through a fake veterans charity. The only catch in this real-life Catch Me If You Can scenario: investigators have no idea who he actually is. ABC's Brian Ross investigates the peculiar case of Mr. X.
Juju, for the last 2 years, authorities have been searching for the mysterious man who posed as an American military hero, was invited to the White House, and raised an estimated $100 million supposedly for U.S. veterans. Now, U.S. Marshals have tracked him down, but most of the money is missing, and he's refusing to even give his real name in what may be one of the biggest scam charity ripoffs ever. Americans have opened their hearts and their wallets for veterans, and charities have been able to get the biggest stars to help raise much-needed money for those who fought for their country. But that reservoir of goodwill has also meant an opportunity for con men, including the man investigators say made off with suitcases full of cash by creating his own scam veterans charity. It was called the U.S. Navy Veterans Association. Its website said it operated in 40 states with more than 66,000 members, all run by a man who used the name Bobby Thompson.
No, they had a great story. Help our troops family, talk about Iraq, talk about Afghanistan.
And thanks to tens of thousands of dollars in charity money for political donations, the man called Bobby Thompson got his picture taken with President Bush, Senator John McCain, Speaker of the House John Boehner, and Rudolph Giuliani, among others, adding credibility to his charity spiel.
I figured he was a real player.
And yet, he was an imposter.
Absolutely.
Looking disheveled in court today in Cleveland, he faced charges including identity theft and refused to tell the judge his real name or anything about his background.
I believe, Your Honor, that the state has a burden of proof as to that.
Thompson told the U.S. Marshals who caught him he prefers to be called Mr. X.
He signs his name Mr. X. He's not admitting to anybody who he is.
And even his former lawyer says she doesn't know his real name.
I have no idea.
Helen McMurray, a former fraud prosecutor herself, admits she fell for the pitch that the U.S. Navy Veterans Association was a legitimate charity.
He was the greatest patriot. My whole family is Navy. I was thrilled to be able to help an association that was going to be helping people like my dad and my grandfather and my uncles, all of whom were Navy veterans.
As the money poured into the charity, McMurray grew increasingly concerned and finally went to the FBI when, she says, she realized that Thompson had created fake records.
The only reason you would prepare a fake diary is if you kept the money and you didn't give it to those poor homeless vets.
But as authorities began to move in, Mr. X, or Thompson, fled and led authorities on a cross-country odyssey, traveling only on bus from Tampa to New York to Providence. Then it was on to Boston, Albuquerque, up California to Seattle, and finally Portland, where U.S. Marshal William Bolden and his team found him.
At one location, he was an employee of Boeing. At another location, he was a visiting scholar or professor from a university.
In his room, the marshals found only one DVD, Catch Me If You Can, the Leonardo DiCaprio film about a young man who traveled the world as an imposter.
But we all have secrets. You know, sometimes when I travel, I use the name Frank Taylor. That's my secret.
DiCaprio's character seemed to be a role model for Mr. X.
So as an imposter, how good was he?
In my 20-some years of law enforcement, he's the best.
Tip that Mr. X was a heavy drinker. The marshals began surveillance of bars and liquor stores in Portland and picked up the trail of his lies.
I thought he was a professor of literature.
He told me that he was helping a friend back home in Ohio open up a new church.
And then pay dirt for the marshals at a place called Biddy McGraw's.
I walked into the pub and immediately saw him sitting at the corner bar stool.
Just like that?
Just like that.
The marshals followed him home and arrested him outside the rooming house where he had lived for months and told people he was a retired Canadian Mountie. He had 3 different wallets with 3 separate identities, and there are dozens more, authorities say.
This was his game, and he loved it.
The U.S. Marshal made a very big bust.
And it was big news in Portland when the marshals also discovered a suitcase in a storage locker stuffed with $100 bills.
But this is more money than I've ever seen in one spot.
After tallying everything up, it totaled out to slightly over $981,000 in U.S. currency.
But millions of dollars more that donors thought were going to America's veterans are still unaccounted for, to the outrage of people who run legitimate organizations.
$1 million would have sent, hundreds of veterans back to school. It would have provided mental health support for thousands. I mean, shame on him. This is the lowest of the low.
The U.S. Marshals tell us that this case has now turned from catch me if you can to identify me if you can. They want to know who Mr. X really is, and they hope someone watching Nightline tonight might recognize him. If you do, go to our website at abcnews.com, the blotter, and we'll tell you how to get in touch with the Marshals, and we'll keep you posted with what happens next in this amazing case.